would never be allowed illegal entry into the United States. A similar order was put in place out by the Mexican government ahead of the caravan's arrival at the Mexico-Guatemala border. But obviously the caravan refused that order. Now the Pentagon is set to deploy 5,000 U.S. troops to the border with Mexico, according to this report. This is thousands more than the initial plan last week to send over 800 active duty troops at the behest of the Department of Homeland Security and President Trump, who called an approaching caravan of migrants a national emergency. The Department of the Active Duty Military for Border Security is a rare move. About 2,100 National Guard personnel were sent last April of 2018 to assist border police with non-lawful enforcement activities. Under this latest plan, about 1,800 troops will go to Texas, 1,700 to Arizona, and 1,500 to California. The troops will be drawn from about 10 U.S. Army installations and consist largely of military police and engineers. One of the U.S. officials stated that U.S. Marines also will be deployed. The number of U.S. soldiers deployed to the southern border will be greater than those deployed in Iraq and Syria currently. President Trump called the caravan an invasion and ushered them to go back. Many gang members and some very bad people are mixed into the caravan heading to our southern border. Please go back. You will not be admitted into the United States unless you go through the legal process. This is an invasion of our country, and our military will be waiting for you.
Obama is kind of following you on the campaign trail. He was in Wisconsin.
How are his crowds?
Yeah, Wisconsin. He's going to Florida this week. And he brought up the issue of the caravan. And he said the following.
They're trying to convince everybody to be afraid of a bunch of impoverished, malnourished refugees 1,000 miles away. That's the thing that is the most important thing in this election. Not health care, not whether or not folks are able to retire. Suddenly, it's this group of folks, we don't even know where they are. They're way down there. Don't fall for that kind of fear-mongering.
We're scaremongering people on the border.
Yeah. Well, he's trying to do the opposite. It's the problem with our country. When you look at that caravan and you look largely, very, big percentage of men, young, strong, a lot of bad people in there, people that are in gangs. We don't want them in this country. If they want to come into the country, you have to apply like other people. We have millions of people coming in. They're applying. They're coming in legally. We have a very strong border. I called up the military. This caravan is not, they're wasting their time. They are not coming into the country.
What's the military going to be able to do? Obama and Bush both sent the National Guard.
But
it had no effect.
They're not me. I'm sending up the military. This is the military. And they're standing there. And one thing that will happen.
No lethal force.
When they're captured, we don't let them out. What has been happening, and we're not as of pretty recently, we're not letting them out. What happens is they would catch and release. We're catching. We're not releasing. So if they want to come over, but we're not even doing that. We're not letting them into this country. We're not going to let gang members.
But what if they're applying for asylum? Isn't the law because Congress didn't change the law?
If they apply for asylum, we're going to hold them until such time as their trial takes place.
Where? Do we have the facilities?
We're going to build tent cities. We're going to put tents up all over the place. We're not going to build structures and spend all of this, hundreds of millions of dollars. We're going to have tents. They're going to be very nice. And they're going to wait, and if they don't get asylum, they get out. And very few people, they don't actually, if you want to wait, they don't usually get asylum. You know that.
80%.
The problem is they release them in, and then they have the trial 3 years later, and nobody shows up. But we are going to, unlike Obama and unlike others, we are going to take the people, we're going to put them in, and they're going to wait. And you know what? Two things happen. When they find out that that happens, you're going to have far fewer people come up. And also, President Obama separated children from parents. Nobody talks about this.
So the judge came along and said, can't do it.
He separated. No, President Obama separated.
No, in the beginning.
Okay, just so we all understand.
The New York Times is saying the military, Mr. President, being called up by you is an election year play. Is this politics or is this real?
When you look at that, thousands of people. Somebody said, now on that one, they built it down. I'm pretty good at figuring out how many people. thousands and thousands of people on the bridge. When you looked at that bridge loaded up with people, that's called an invasion of our country. This has nothing to do with elections. And I've been saying this long before election. I've been saying this before I ever thought of running for office. We have to have strong borders. If we don't have strong borders, we don't have a country.
Caravan tonight from the president's interview with Laura Ingraham. First, the president is sending active duty military to the border rather than additional National Guard troops, 2,000 of them already there. Second, he's signaling it's going to be much tougher for migrants seeking asylum. So let's bring in Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton to talk about all the latest developments. Mr. Attorney General, good to have you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, so we know 5,200 active duty troops are going down. We're told that they are not going to be confronting migrants. They're going to be logistics, helping with aviation, medicine, staging areas, but there's been plenty of backlash. I want to read you something from the ACLU. They say this: President Trump has chosen just before midterm elections to force the military into furthering his anti-immigrant agenda of fear and division. The reality is that many of the non-citizens arriving at our borders are exercising their right in international and domestic law to seek asylum from violence and persecution at home. Your response?
That's ridiculous. You know, the president has an obligation to defend the border and to protect the citizens of this country and of my state from illegal immigration and some of the consequences that we've had to deal with in my state over the last, decades and decades. And so he's doing his job, and I hope he continues to do his job. I think he's doing a great job, actually.
Well, and interesting in the Washington Post reporting on this today, they said this: Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto on Friday offered temporary work permits, medical care, and other benefits to migrants if they agree to register with authorities and remain far from the U.S. border. But the core group of mostly Honduran migrants has rejected his entreaty and continued heading north toward the U.S. border. What obligation do people have to stop in a country they're passing through if that could be a safe spot for them versus coming to the U.S., which clearly is going to have a better economic situation?
Well, look, there's an opportunity for them to avoid what's going to happen at the border, which I don't think Trump is going to let them in. If you look at what he's relying on, it's the same law that he relied on with the travel ban, which says that he specifically has the authority to limit entry of any class of non-resident aliens that he views as detrimental to the country. In this case, that's what he's relying on. The Supreme Court upheld that in a recent case that you're familiar with in June, Trump versus Hawaii. And they said basically the president could limit the scope, how long somebody came in, when they came in, whether they come in, and the conditions of how they come in. So he's perfectly within his rights to stop them from coming into this country, including getting asylum.
What is the latest number, ladies and gentlemen? I've heard 4,000, I've heard 8,000, I've heard even 14,000. It doesn't really matter if you find 1 in 1,000. And one migrant caravan member admits he's been deported and convicted of attempted murder in the United States, and yet he's planning to re-enter and request a pardon for his felony. Watch this.
Leaders, the Pueblos Sin Fronteras group, and if you look here, you can see them all in this square. They're very tired. They've been going since October 13th. There's a lot of coughing here. They've got blisters on their feet. It's been tough, but they say that they're not accepting Mexico's offer for temporary asylum, temporary jobs, temporary health care, and they're definitely not heeding President Trump's warnings to not show up at the border. They all say they're coming. Organizers here say, in fact, the group may be too big, but yet they're still going to go forward, and they're going to show up on the border. One person who's probably not going to have luck once he gets there is Jose, we spoke to earlier, who had prior convictions. Take a listen. Are you willing to break the law to get back to the United States?
Yo quiero entrar y pedir un perdón.
He says he wants to apply for pardon for the felony he committed.
Can you ask him exactly what happened?
¿Cuál es tu felonía exactamente?
Number 3.
A third-degree felony?
Intento de matar.
Attempt of murder.
But not everybody has convictions. We spoke to another man here who said that he was deported about 10 years ago. He was in a roundup in a construction site, got deported. He waited 10 years to come out, but he is from Honduras as well, says he's just going to show up on the border in Tijuana, he thinks, and he's just going to plead his case and ask for asylum. I told him that the administration is not going to grant it to him, but he said he's got no choice. He's going to try anyway.